Next up on the show is going to be Ruben Galindo. He's a real estate expert investor who has 10 of his own properties, right?
That's correct.
Ruben, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for
I know
having me
you've
back.
been busy. You've been busy all over the place. And, obviously I appreciate everything that you do out there in the world for us with your other job. So let's talk a little bit about managing your rental properties, because this is an area that I've thought about getting into real estate investing. And we even talked with Paul a little bit about that. Mm-hmm. And I think what freaks me out is this idea of managing the properties. Even when I brought it up to my wife, and she's like, she just rolls her eyes. She's like, I'm not going to do any property management. I'm just telling you that straight up, because we're scared about it. So let's talk a little bit about that. So let's start with finding renters. So tell me a little bit about that.
So managing your properties obviously can be a scary thing for a lot of people that have never done it. It was scary to me, but I went ahead and took the dive, and I've learned a lot of things since then. And you're talking about finding the renters. The biggest thing is to have your systems in place, just like the home warranty service. They have their systems in place. So for me, when I start looking for proper or tenants, then I market it on Zillow. Zillow has been very successful for me, but I also use apartments.com. So I list the property on there, and once I push it out, there is a service. There's a service fee you have to pay for, but it's very affordable. I think it's like $10 a week, and Zillow does a great job pushing out the property that's for rent.
Well, and this $10 a week, can you turn it on and off as you need it, or?
Yes.
Or do you pretty much buy by the year, or what?
No. You can turn it on and off as
because if you have
need.
one rental property, right, and you've got it rented, you don't necessarily need to have. Oh, okay, that's cool.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's very, very good at finding you qualified tenants.
Yes. Well, not necessarily qualified. It's pushing your property out there, and people are seeing it, and you start getting messages through Zillow. Hey, I'm interested. Is it still available? Where do I apply? All those questions start popping up. And because I list my property on a different website, I just copy that link and I put it in the message and send it back to them.
Okay.
So it's pretty convenient. It's pretty easy to do as well.
Okay, and let's talk about vetting them now. So what then?
Well, that's a screening process, so it's a completely different process. Mm-hmm. Through experience, I've kind of learned, and through education, learning and stuff like that, books that I've read, you have to go through the screening process. You also have to have a criteria. You want to be sure that you're fair to everyone. And there's a certain specific criteria that I use, and that's already posted on the listing itself. And people will be able to see whether they qualify or don't qualify, right? So that's another thing that kind of helps with the pre-screening process. And if they do qualify, then at that point, they submit their application. I get a copy of their credit check. I get a copy of their criminal background. And then I just look through it.
So what we want to know, obviously, with the credit check is have you rented before, and did you default, or did you have problems actually keeping up with your rent? Those types of things, right? Because we want to identify the problem child before we get it.
Yeah. So you're part of the application process. It's gonna ask if you're currently renting, or if you rented before, who's that point of contact. So you obviously, that's part of the screening process. You want to make sure that you communicate with not only the current landlord, but maybe the previous ones before that too.
Right. So y'all actually talk to each other.
Yes.
All this stuff. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about collecting rental income then. How do you do that?
That's again, I use online property management software, and everything's done through that system. Once I accept a tenant, then I push out an invite. They set up their bank account through the system, and they can set up automatic payments. It goes through that website, and then it goes back into my bank account.
Well, you say they can set up automatic payments. Mm-hmm. How about they have to set up automatic payments? I mean,
it's not really a requirement. I don't require that, right?
I think I would.
I require payment, whether they want to set it up automatically or not. It's their responsibility to make that monthly payment.
Yeah.
So I don't go down to that level, right? I do offer other options. I do give them the option that if they have the same bank that where I have my business account, and they just want to do an automatic transfer, that's acceptable as well. So it just depends what they want to do.
So let's talk about non-payment real quick, though. So let's say they're late.
Yes.
What then?
There's late fees associated with it, and that's clearly stated in the lease agreement as well.
Okay. You don't like send Goodfellas over there to take care of business.
Yeah.
That's not legal, Mark. Okay. So what about dealing with tenant complaints?
So again, that online software that I use is great because they can submit a claim, a repair request, or a maintenance request. I get an automatic message. They can also upload short videos. They can upload a photograph, and I forward that to whoever my contractor may be, and they all kind of have an idea of what's going on. I think that's what actually Paul says, that it helps in his business and helps in my business as well. And the contractor goes out there, takes care of the problem, and then I'm able to close the loop through the online tracking system. I think you guys use as well.
Wow.
And so it's all already in the system, and the tenant can actually see where we're at and when we close it out.
Nice. Wow. So, I mean, you can legit be a small business person, have one or two properties, and you just have all the support in the world we need.
Yes.
But I say that, but let me qualify that, because getting started in this whole business is not necessarily a cakewalk, right? Because there's a lot of big decisions to be made as you go through it. And so you're part of what you do business-wise is you help investors get going with this.
Yes,
So
sir.
tell me a little bit, let's say I want to get involved with that, and I'm fairly new at that. I reach out to you. What are the initial steps that we're going to go through?
So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a Zoom call. I like the face-to-face communication. I'll set up the Zoom call, and we're going to talk about, first of all, what are your goals? Because everybody has different goals. You know, what is the strategy you've been thinking about? And then I'm going to kind of give you my opinion whether that strategy falls in line with your goals. Because sometimes people have a certain goal, and they think that this strategy is the best strategy, and that's not necessarily true. Right? Because there's a lot of things they haven't really thought about. So during that initial consultation, that's what I tried to find out and learn from you, and then try to structure a plan for you to help you reach your ultimate goal.
Right, because identifying a rental property that would be a good choice.
Yes, that's a
to use
completely
as a-
different. Yeah, that's a completely different matter, because depending on your strategy and your goals, that's where it's going to direct us in what type of investment you're going to go for, whether it's just a long-term rental, whether it's a house hacking opportunity, or whether it's a move-in flip. You know, so there's so many different things that you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where we could get lost, right? Because we're like, well, I want a home in the Dominion to rent. And you're like, well, wait a second, right? I mean, because you're spending a lot of money for a lot of house, but then
the numbers got to
it
make
may
sense.
sit.
Yeah, the numbers got to make sense.
All right. And so you have 10 properties, right? And so do they all pretty much stay rented for you?
Very, very fortunate that I think because the systems that I have in place, because of the reputation and how well we take care of our properties and take care of our tenants, we've been very, very successful in maintaining almost 100% occupancy.
All right. So if somebody wanted to get started with this, how much money do they need to have in their pocket?
Well, it depends on the type of rental property that you're going to get. Depends the strategy you're going to use. Are you going to buy? Are you going to take the house hacking approach, where you're going to be an owner occupant? You're going to live in that home. So there's different down payment requirements. If you're purchasing a straight out investment property, then that's going to require at least 20% down.
Okay. All right. So and what are we looking at for a rental house here in San Antonio area? Give me a ballpark.
Right now, they're at least
Yeah, right.
200,000.
200?
Yeah, they're at least 200,000.
So you're going to need, what is that, 40 grand?
That's 40 grand if you're buying it as an investment property, plus closing costs.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, if people want to get in touch with you, how do they do
Sure,
that?
they can reach me at 210-275-0791. Also, they can visit my website at www.sanantoniorealestateinvestors.com.
All right. Thank you, Ruben. I appreciate you coming back.